Okay. Good evening, Zimbabwe, and welcome to On the Spot, our prime broadcast look at the stories making the headlines in Zimbabwe. My name is Yvonne, and I do hope I find all of you well. In the news, the hashtag 31 July mantra has created a number of social challenges for the people, starting with an extension of lockdown procedures and arrest of proponents of the movement, Jacob Ngari-Vume, and prominent journalist Hopewell Chingono. Let's look at what the main newspapers had to say on these and other issues. When we go to the Herald story, we realize that war veterans are threatening. War veterans warn instigators of the ZANU-PF and veterans of Zimbabwe's liberation struggle yesterday warned opposition parties that are working in connivance with some Western embassies to subvert the will of the people through illegal demonstrations, that any such attempt will be met with equal force. In separate press conferences, ZANU-PF acting spokesperson Comrade Patrick Chinamasa and Zimbabwe National Liberation War Veterans Association chairperson Comrade Chris Muchangwa said no amount of noise making will break the determination and the boldness of the country's leadership. This comes after the country's opposition parties have been fronting Jacob Ngari-Vume of Transform Zimbabwe Party and political activists in the mold of Hopewell Chingono to lead protests to subvert a constitutionally elected government on July 31 under the guise of anti-corruption demonstrations. So this is what the Herald has had to say concerning these issues. Now we move on to the issue of Hopewell Chingono and Jacob Ngari-Vume that were in the courts today. And we learned that Ngari-Vume was denied bail at the magistrate's court. The reason is that organizer of the planned 31 July mass protest, Jacob Ngari-Vume, has been denied bail. Harare magistrate Mr. Trinos Utawashe today remanded him in custody to August 6 for his routine remand. Ngari-Vume, who is also an opposition politician, appeared before the Harare Magistrates Court yesterday, charged with scheming against government. He is being charged together with political activist Hopewell Chingono, but they appeared before different magistrates. Prosecution opposed bail in both cases. So Chingono and Ngari-Vume were charged with incitement to commit public violence, or alternatively incitement to participate in a gathering with the intent to promote public violence by posting messages through their Twitter handles between March 1 and July 20, 2020. Ngari-Vume appeared before Harare Magistrate Trinos Utawashe. I think we mentioned that earlier on. It is alleged that while in Harare city center, Ngari-Vume posted numerous messages on Twitter in an attempt to influence many people to engage in public violence or participate in a gathering that would disturb peace. In some of the messages, he said he met and consulted different stakeholders while mobilizing for the demonstration. Ngari-Vume alleged in the messages that he had met with people such as Mr. Ian Makone, Dr. Shinge Mnyeza, Mr. Elton Mangoma, and Godfrey Tseningamu as part of mobilizing people. Mrs. Michael Reza and Jonathan Mrombedzi appeared for the state, while Mr. Moses Nkomo represented Ngari-Vume. Now, when we move on to the daily news, you'd realize that government critics have moved on to say that the curfew that has been called on concerning the COVID-19 lockdown has been called as a measure to hide behind coronavirus. So it says the government's critics accused authorities yesterday of allegedly hiding behind the soaring coronavirus infections in the country to trample on people's freedoms after President Emerson Mnangagwa imposed a 12-hour curfew this week, the Daily News reports. This comes as the country is bracing for anti-government protests planned for Friday next week, which the opposition vows will go ahead despite the authorities not sanctioning them. It also comes as more and more Zimbabweans are contracting COVID-19 and dying from the lethal virus, which has so far infected nearly 2,000 people in the country. The angry opposition and pressure groups told the Daily News yesterday that the curfew was allegedly meant to stop the planned month and mass demonstrations. The MDC Alliance Vice President Diabetes said the curfew was similar to an illegal state of emergency as it suspended fundamental human rights. The same message expelled former ZANU-PF Youth League political commissar Godfrey Tsenengamu, who now leads the pressure group Front for Economic Emancipation, FEE, also questioned the timing of the curfew, which he said would not stop next week protest. So Promise Mkwananzi of Tejamoka Sesjikile leader also told the Daily News yesterday that the curfew would not deter them from protesting on 31 July. All this comes as authorities have been accused of unjustly clamping down on some of the July 31 organizers, such as Transform Zimbabwe leader Jacob Ngarivume, who was arrested this week on charges of inciting public violence. On Tuesday, the government banned the movement of people between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. as it bid to further combat the rising coronavirus deaths and infection in the country. As a result, only those people who are regarded as performing essential services, which include media workers, will be allowed to move and operate during the 12-hour curfew period. So this is what has been happening in the media. We also move on to the RBZ mechanization funds looting scandal that has been making rounds of late, where serious allegations have been made against people, high-ranking people and politically exposed personalities who have managed to, to gain access. So we move on to that on today's show. Gono clears Chamisa from the RBZ funds looting scandal. We look at that coming in from one of the online papers. Let's go to there. There we go. Yes, so former Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe Governor Gideon Gono has cleared MDC Alliance leader, Advocate Nelson Chamisa, from the list of people accused of corruptly benefiting from the controversial RBZ farm mechanization program in 2007 and 2008. He was speaking on a Zimbabwe television network where he said some senior members of the opposition did receive the money but exonerated the advocate Nelson Chamisa. So the video is on Zim Papers TV network, revisiting the farm mechanization program of 2007 to 2008. So these are some of the news that are making the headlines in today's paper. We also move in. We also move into the latest move by Malaba, the Chief Justice, who has reversed controversial directives that judges should first seek approval or have their judgments seen by their superiors before being handed down. A move described by the legal fraternity within and beyond Zimbabwe's borders as not only unconstitutional, but also a threat to individual and decisional independence. On July 16, Malaba issued a practice directive in the form of a memorandum addressed to the Supreme Court, High Court, Labour Court, and Administrative Court, directing that before any judgment or any order of before any judgment or an order of the High Court or Labour Court is issued or handed down, it should be seen and approved by the head of court division. This week, Africa Judges and Juries Forum, AJJF, a pan-African network of judges and jurists who are committed to promoting justice and development in Africa, did not have any kind words for Malaba, calling upon him to revoke this infamous directive. Responding to the Law Society of Zimbabwe, which had raised similar concerns on the directive, the Judicial Service Commission Secretary Walter Chikwana, in a letter dated 21 July, said the directive was not meant to stifle the independence of the judiciary, whether it was meant to, neither was it meant to give heads of court powers over judgment and decisions made by fellow judges. So that's also coming in from Site News, speaking on the cry that has been made by many Zimbabweans that our courts are captured. We'll take a short break, and when we come back, we continue looking at the stories making the headlines in our news today. All right, welcome back. You're watching On the Spot, where we look at the news that are making the headlines in Zimbabwe today. Thank you so much, Chasarira Hope, for your message. Delayed justice is denied justice. Yes, we go back to the story where lawyer Beatrice Mutetwa blasted magistrate over Chingono bail ruling. Sadly, because of the COVID-19 formula and the 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. curfew, Chingono's case had to roll over the ruling to Friday morning. So in the story on Zim Morning Post, it says firebrand lawyer Beatrice Mutetwa on Thursday took a swipe At the magistrate's hearing, journalist Hopo Chingono's case for rolling over the bail ruling to Friday morning due to the government-imposed COVID-19 curfew of 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. Mtetwa, during a press brief after the court session at the High Court on Thursday, said the whole excuse is a mockery of the justice delivery system. We find this extremely frustrating because constitutional rights like the right to liberty have now been suspended through failure to make appropriate arrangements. If everyone knows that there will be no transport at 3 for staff, surely they should make arrangements when it comes to urgent matters like bail to take staff home after hours so that constitutional rights are not deliberately infringed. Chingono's bail hearing was postponed today after the magistrate stated that the court staff was supposed to close early so that they could get home earlier before curfew time. Mtetwa said this was a mockery to the fundamental right of liberty. Meanwhile, as highlighted earlier, the court dismissed the bail application of his co-accused Jacob Garivunwe. The two were arrested on Monday on charges of allegedly calling for a demonstration against corruption. Let's hear from you, Zimbabweans. What do you think? What do you think is happening, and why do you think this is happening the way it is? Moving on, we look at the another latest news coming in. We learned yesterday that the city of Harare Mayor Councillor Herbert Gomba was arrested, and today he was in court. So what does the Herald have to say about that issue? Let us find out. Harare Mayor Councillor Herbert Gomba, who is facing criminal abuse of office charges, has been remanded in custody until tomorrow for his bail application. He appeared before Magistrate Bianca Makwande. Gomba was picked by police on Monday night on charges related to land scams. Head of the Special Anti-Corruption Unit, Mr. Tabani Mpofu, said Gomba's related land scams that have robbed the city. Okay, I don't know what they were trying to say there, but yeah. So the head of the Special Anti-Corruption Unit confirmed that they took Councillor Herbert Gomba on land scams related issues. In some of the charges, he's being jointly charged with other top council officials who have already been arrested. The charges emanate from allegations that 150 stands were created in Kwadzana from open spaces and sold for private gain, along with more stands in other areas. There are further allegations that police officers ranging in rank from constable to assistant commissioner and the chief public prosecutor did not push forward with investigations and prosecutions of some of the suspects and were paid off with stands in Westlake. The police officers and public prosecutor have since been arrested and appeared in court. City of Harare officials arrested over the last few weeks and have appeared in court on corruption charges include the housing director Admo Nekairo, who is facing a charge of criminal abuse of office that arises from his approval of the Wesley Stands allocation. He was denied bail on Monday. Acting Human Resources Director Matthew Marara and Principal Housing Director Edgar Zehonye, with other co-accused, also appeared in court and were denied bail. They were allegedly involved in the Kwadzana land scam, prejudicing council of over $1 million. Zehonye is facing is facing a charge of criminal abuse of office, while Marara is facing a fraud charge along with Aaron Taherera, the acting chief clerical officer. The court refused bail, citing significant risks that Marara and co-accused Taherera would abscond and that Nekairo would likely interfere with the crucial prosecution witness. So that's the update we get there for the reasons why the anti-corruption, the Special Anti-Corruption Unit picked up the mayor of Harare, Councillor Herbert Gomba. We saw the MDC Alliance coming in on board, condemning the time, and the manner in which the mayor of the metropolitan city was arrested yesterday. Right. Jokers, everyone knows Chamisa is not corrupt. Wow, okay. Thank you so much for that comment, Jokers. I'm not too sure if it's the notorious Baba Jukwa or what. But yeah, thank you so much, Jokers, for that comment. Everyone knows Chamisa is not corrupt. So that's the people's president that Jokers is highlighting on the scandal that has been rocking. And this one is an interesting story that we find in the Newsday, and it is headlined, "Will not pay back looted funds," says ZANU-PF. So the ruling ZANU-PF party has said it will not apologize for the alleged looting of the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe farm mechanization facility and blamed sanctions, Rhodesians, and the opposition MDC alliance for the failure of the land reform program. Responding for the first time after days of silence, after the naming of senior party officials who benefited from the 2007-2008 RBZ-funded farm mechanization scheme, but never paid back. Acting party spokesperson Patrick Chinamasa accused United Kingdom-based lawyer Alex Magaisa of working to please his foreign paymasters. All right, what do you think? What do you think? Magaisa over the weekend released a list of ZANU-PF officials, including President Emmerson Mnangagwa, senior judges, clerics, and other ZANU-PF apologists who benefited from the RBZ program and never paid back the loans. After the leak, former central bank chief Gideon Gono tried to defend the beneficiaries, saying it was never a loan and no one was obliged to pay back the money for the equipment given. However, Gono was further exposed after Magaisa provided documentary evidence, including newspaper articles and letters confirming the beneficiaries were supposed to repay the loans. He said the farm mechanization program was undertaken as an empowerment tool for the farmers and was not a loan, but a subsidy, claiming that the ZANU-PF government, through its interventions, had over the past 20 years fed the nation. However, Zimbabwe has suffered its worst food crisis since 2000, with observers accusing the underutilization of farms as one of the major reasons the former breadbasket of Africa was in a crisis. Over 7 million Zimbabweans are food insecure and in need of urgent humanitarian assistance, with more than 4.3 million people severely food insecure in rural areas. So according to the latest Integrated Food Security Phase Classification Analysis undertaken in February this year. So this is what has been happening among Zimbabweans. I think yesterday we looked at that list that was released and the figures that are being spoken of, and these certainly are not forgivable figures because they could surely kickstart our nation's economy. We look at the issue of civil servants. Civil servants, are you there? Are you there, civil servants? Civil servants yesterday expressed anger after failing to access their $75 allowances as promised by the government, accused the employer of being insincere. Government last month promised civil servants a cushioning allowance of $75 for the next 3 months and ordered employees to open nostril bank accounts to access the funds. However, the civil servants yesterday said they were failing to access the promised funds, with Finance Minister Thuli Ncube saying banks would not be allowed to release hard currency to individuals. Wow. The systems are ready for civil servants to get the $75 from the foreign currency, the special foreign currency accounts, which were opened. The process has been completed now, and the banks have said they are ready to issue cards for use in the shop. However, we do not want individuals to withdraw cash from banks for the 75 US dollar allowance, because we are concerned as a government that it will end up in the parallel market. This came as information. Permanent Secretary Ndawaningi Mangwana accused banks of compelling civil servants to liquidate their allowances within the bank. Okay, so the Apex Council, on the other hand, says there was no clear explanation on the allowances they were supposed to get, and this has created a lot of confusion. They don't know whether this is real or not. If one goes to the bank, they are told that they can convert the amount into RTGS, then transfer it into their Zim dollar account. So there's no joy for the civil servants, especially concerning the 75 US dollar cushioning allowance. So it's not going to come as hard currency, but they can only liquidate. All right, so we move on to the next issue, which is the COVID-19. COVID-19, I hope people, you are keeping yourself safe, you're keeping yourself at home, maintaining social distancing, and washing your hands regularly. Somebody was saying that if somebody were to ask me what I did in 2020, I'll tell them I've been washing hands. Yes, that's what we have to do right now, because the COVID-19 is real, people. So we need to keep ourselves safe, and more safe. So we have a sad situation happening where about 200 nurses, among them doctors, have contracted COVID-19. So we go into that story. About 200 health workers have tested positive to COVID-19, forcing some hospitals to shut down as government continues to dither on its promise to avail adequate personal protective equipment to the health frontline workers, Newsday has learned. The majority hit by the virus are student nurses who have been thrown to the deep end to run public hospitals in the absence of qualified nurses who have been on strike for the past 34 days, demanding US dollar salaries, better working conditions, and adequate protective clothing. Zimbabwe Nurses Association President Enoch Longo yesterday told Newsday that lack of PPE had immediately caused a spike in the number of health workers contracting the virus. This is a really sad development, and the Zimbabwe Association of Doctors for Human Rights wrote to Health Acting Permanent Secretary Gibson Mhlanga, expressing concern over the growing number of healthcare workers contracting the virulent disease at their workplaces. We've also noted that there is no priority in providing information in the ministry's daily updates on the number of health professionals, the bedrock of the response, who have tested positive, recovering, or deceased. As ZADHR, we believe it is in the interest of health professionals and the public in general to be informed on the status of their colleagues and frontline staffers. We also urge the ministry to provide a brief on the numbers, region, provinces, and status of all health professionals who have tested positive for COVID-19 to date. Zimbabwe's confirmed COVID-19 cases yesterday shot to 1,820 with 26 deaths. So this is an update that we have on the COVID-19. In the Herald, we are told that donations keep on coming in for COVID-19. What we are not so sure of is whether these are assisting people. All right, so companies donate towards COVID-19 fight in Manicaland. So more companies have come forward with assistance meant to equip various institutions in Manicaland with the necessary tools to fight the COVID-19 pandemic. Old Mutual, Coca-Cola Company, National Aid Council, and Red Cross Society donated PPEs worth millions of dollars to the provincial quarantine centers, the Victoria Shitepo Provincial Hospital, Zororai Old People's Home, Chengetai Orphanage, Rukariro Rehabilitation Center, and Nzeve Deaf Center. Accepting the donations, Minister of State for Manicaland and the Provincial COVID-19 Task Force Chairperson, Dr. Ellen Gwaradzimba, commended the gesture by the corporate and quasi-government institutions, which she said would go a long way in the fight against COVID-19. She said 45 people had tested positive for COVID-19 in Manicaland, and there was a need to minimize local transmissions as much as possible. Old Mutual made a donation of PPE to the provincial hospital and also registered 8,000 health workers for free life insurance in the event of untimely death due to COVID-19. Wow. CAB's acting regional manager, Mr. Arthur Nyansika, said the donation was part of second phase of sponsorship put towards the fight against the pandemic. So we see a whole lot of companies donating towards COVID-19. The question is are the donations being used wisely, and are they going to support our frontline workers who every day are working towards ensuring that we are safe? All right. So this has been some of the news making the headlines in our news. We look at the daily news. There are a lot of missed Sustainable Development Goals targets, the death penalty laws biased, and government moving in to contain Bulawayo outbreak. I think this one is an interesting story to go through because there has been a lot of outcry in Bulawayo. So we want to look at what measures the government has put in place in order to assist this part of our nation. So the government is currently intervening to contain the gastrointestinal outbreak in Bulawayo, Information Minister Monica Mchangwa said. Speaking during a post-cabinet media briefing, Mchangwa said the outbreak has since affected 1,900 people in Zimbabwe's largest city. Wow, in Zimbabwe's second largest city, rather. On the obtaining coronavirus pandemic, Mchangwa said the government would impose stiffer penalties for people who are not wearing masks. So people, you need to wear your masks. Otherwise, there'll be stiffer penalties for you if you are found without your mask. Finance Minister Mthuli Ncube said government has set all the modalities for civil servants to access their 75. Yeah, that one is not coming. It won't come at any time. And so that's the situation in Bulawayo. The gastrointestinal outbreak in Bulawayo has been a cause of worry, and we've also learned that it has become the epicenter for COVID-19 as well. So there's a lot of ill health happening in Bulawayo, and a lot still needs to be done. So this has been our news, our political and current affairs happening in the country. So let's continue to acquaint ourselves with what is happening in our country, what is happening in the news, and everything that is important for us to be equipped with the knowledge of what is happening. So thank you so much. Thank you so much, Zimbabwe. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in to On the Spot, where we are looking at the news, making the headlines in our newspapers and our digital content creators, our digital platforms. Thank you so much for your comments. Hanzi vanajukwa makanyepera makutaura pokunyarara anovimba chakanzi jukwa ndiani. Okay, Chief Admirer Somanyanga, thank you so much for that comment. Well, Jukwas, ameno kwanza Indiana chavimba ni mashoko enyu given what has happened in the past. But all the same, we thank God for the life that we have in Zimbabwe. Let's keep each other safe. Let's continue having conversations that are helpful for our nation. We need to build Zimbabwe. Let's continue to hold hands. Let's continue to encourage each other. Don't hold hands, by the way, social distance. Let's continue to hold hands in the spirit. Yeah, let's continue to fight this pandemic together, and let's forge ahead. We'll come out stronger. Thank you so much. May God bless you. Until we meet again tomorrow at the same time as we look at today in the headlines. Thank you very much.